Hello and welcome to the Youth in the Law. My name is Catherine and I will be the show's facilitator for today. This week's topic deals with sexual assault and its impact on youth. Sexual assault, which includes rape and other forms of sexual molestation, is a serious criminal offense. Offenders found guilty of sexual assault could face multiple years in prison. A big component of sexual assault is rape. Rape is usually defined by the unlawful sexual intercourse with a female without her consent. Nonetheless, the victim doesn't necessarily have to be a female. For something to be classified as rape, all that is required in any form of sexual penetration. Major elements of rape include consent and force. If a victim doesn't consent to intercourse and the offender forces himself or herself onto the victim, this constitutes rape. Another thing to remember is there is usually no mistake defense in rape cases. Even if an offender didn't originally have the malicious intent to rape, he can still be found guilty. Excuses such as the offender being drunk or drugged at the time of any sexual attack is no excuse. Even if the victim consented to intercourse, but she was drunk or drugged at the time of intercourse, the offender could still be found guilty of sexual assault. Now here are our panelists, Isaac and Trayvon. I'm going to ask them some questions. We often hear about date rape situations at high school and university parties. Even if the victim consents to sexual activity with the offender, but the victim is drunk or drugged, it can still be rape. In some cases, courts have found offenders guilty of rape even when the offender never contributed to the victim being drunk or drugged. What do you think of this?
Sometimes, your judgment could be clouded. Sometimes, people might say things that they don't necessarily mean or agree to things without really, fully understanding exactly what it is, because you're hearing things and your speech just kind of might be jarbled. You just go, oh yeah, sure, yeah. And after, next thing you know, this is happening, and then you're in that state where you can't even can't really acknowledge what's going on, or you can't even really, fight. I think they should be at fault, because then, you should be aware that, okay, I'm kind of abusing this person's state of mind right now because they're not really all there, and they might just be saying things without even fully understanding,
But sometimes, the perpetrator could trick the victim. The victim will think the perpetrator is a good person, he's a decent person, and then when they go to the party, they get drunk and stuff, something like rape, and then the victim gets raped.
Statutory rape is another big issue of sexual assault. This means if a victim engages in intercourse but is under the certain age of consent, an adult offender will be guilty of sexual assault no matter what, even if the victim consents to sex. The offender will be guilty. In Ontario, the statutory age of consent is 16. Do you agree with the idea of statutory rape?
Well, if the two of them are in love, but then and the female is below 15, then I feel like it's not necessary for that. I feel like it's not necessary if they're in love.
Mm-hmm.
But if he forces himself on her, then that's when that law should kick in.
I don't know. On this law, I'm sort of. I'm like 60-40. I'm not 50-50, I'm like 60-40, or like maybe 70-30. Because I think it is kind of weird that an 18-year-old would be going for someone that's younger. I think the 18-year-old has is more aware of I guess an 18-year-old typically would kind of be more aware of consequence. But I don't want to go into the whole science of the thing and everything. But when you're a teenager, that whole frontal lobe of your brain is still in development. Which is thinking the consequences of the decisions that you might make. And I think that they're just they would be more mature typically. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like in certain cases they might be a little manipulative to someone that's younger. It could happen. It could happen in certain cases. So, but I don't think that's always the case. So I'm kind of 60-40.
Yeah, and it happens also in cases where not just the 15 and 18 part, where the ages are stretched out too. You even look at some certain school boards. Certain school boards, you'll find out how the teacher goes out with a student that's like 15 years old and stuff, and that and then that law didn't kick in.
Yeah, I think if the person is like, I think if you're in your 20s, you go for someone like 5 years older than you. Oh, that's kind of, I don't know. That's kind of weird. That's
When you're in your 20s, or
yeah, I feel like 20 something. Going for someone that's like under 16. I mean, that's kind of
yeah, that's kind of weird.
Why?
It
You
is,
shouldn't be.
exactly.
It doesn't make any sense.
Courts are now starting to view homosexual rape as sexual assault also. Traditionally, the law viewed the offender as always being male and the victim always being female. Is there any reason why gender-biased rules of sexual assault should still be around?
No, I don't think they should still be around because it could very well happen. I guess a man on a man or a woman and a woman, like it could happen.
A woman could rape a man.
Yeah, it is possible too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's wrong rape no matter what their gender.
Yeah, rape is rape no matter who does it, though.
Yeah, I don't think it should be restricted to just man and woman because it's possible. If you think about it, it's possible to happen either any which way.
Exactly.
In Canada, sexual assault cases include examinations of the victim and the offender's past histories. Community reputations and criminal records are considered when examining a person's credibility. Are you in favor of these potentially mitigating factors?
Somewhat am in favor of those factors because, in some cases, say a case like this. Say the so-called perpetrator or something had absolutely no bad history and whatnot, and after the woman who claimed that she was raped had no signs of any sort of struggle, any sort of injury or whatsoever, and say it just so happened that she could have exaggerated the story or twisted a few things or completely lied about it. Those things would actually be evidence for that. I think at the same time it might even offend. And she can take it very offensive at the fact that they're even doubting her and they want to examine her.
That's all the time we have for today on The Youth and the Law. Again, I'm Catherine and these are my co-hosts. Thank you for watching.